Winnie the Pooh may just be one of the most iconic and beloved characters to ever come out of the House of Mouse, being extremely wholesome in a way that endears him to kids and adults of any age and perfectly captures the feelings of childhood innocence and imagination. He's one teddy bear that pretty much everyone wishes was their friend. And in addition to his very childlike demeanor, there's also his extremely soothing and relaxing voice, which perfectly fits his calm and simple nature. And today, it's that aspect of this iconic teddy bear that I'd like to focus on. Who exactly was the man that originated the beloved voice of Winnie the Pooh? And what's his story? Now, as I've stressed in plenty of other videos, please keep in mind that I am not a film expert or professional film historian, so please forgive me if I make any slight mistakes or oversights. And this isn't also going to be an in-depth analysis here. I'm only going to be covering the basics to the best of my ability, so if anything about that doesn't appeal to you, please feel free to click off the video. Now, if you're a lifelong Disney fan, you probably already know who I'm talking about. But just for those of you who don't, the man in question is Sterling Holloway. Born in Georgia in 1905 to middle-class parents, Sterling Holloway knew from an early age that he wanted to be an actor and performer, to the point that he started attending the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City at only 15 to pursue acting as a full-time career. And while there, he befriended a fellow aspiring actor by the name of Spencer Tracy, whom Holloway kept in contact with and spoke very highly of for the rest of his life. After graduating from the Academy of Dramatic Arts, he found minor success in small walk-on parts in various stage shows throughout the early 1920s, but his unique voice was what got him the most attention and was considered his best feature, even introducing the songs Manhattan and Mountain Greenery in 1925 and 1926, respectively. Then the same year he went to Hollywood and started being cast in small roles in movies, though due to his odd appearance, he was quickly typecast as a comedic actor. He was even told at one point that he would never make it because he was, quote, too ugly, and that, coupled with a desire not to be famous, caused him to leave the movie industry and pursue a different career. However, the Great Depression of 1929 forced him back into acting when he couldn't pay the bills and proved talented enough to be cast in small roles. From there, Holloway appeared in many one-scene roles and walk-on parts in films throughout the early 1930s, to the point that you could almost make a game out of trying to spot his brief appearances in many films of that era. But around the same time, he was also finding much greater success on radio, as many found his odd yet soothing voice very endearing and made him instantly recognizable, as well as allowed him to use his best asset while being able to avoid the unintended comical effect of watching such a voice come out of a face that didn't exactly suit it. But either way, Holloway continued to play small parts in movies through the 1930s and 40s, and even got to work with many popular actors of his day, though he was still much more well known and recognized for his work on radio. And it was his success there that would lead him to even greater things. Because as all of this was going on, Walt Disney was simultaneously trying to show the world the limitless potential of animation as an art form, and to that end was often looking for voice actors that could help bring his characters to life. And Disney had a particular interest in people who were very successful on radio, because they often had the same skills required to voice an animated character, and already knew how to act strictly with their voice. And Holloway impressed Disney so much that he was even considered for the role of Sleepy in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but this ultimately didn't come to pass. But only a few years later, Holloway would end up making his Disney debut as the voice of Mr. Stork in Dumbo, and not only did he prove to be such a fan favorite that Holloway would reprise the role in 1952's Lampert and the Sheepish Lion, but it started a partnership with the company that would last for the next 40 years. From there, Holloway would be cast in several Disney movies, including as the adult version of Flower the Skunk in Bambi, as well as the narrator of 2 sequences in The Three Caballeros and Make Mine Music, respectively, and as the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. And though he seemed like an odd choice for that last one at first glance, he proved to be so perfect in the role that many have admitted that his voice became the default one for the character in their head, regardless of whether it's the Disney version of him or not. And this was also in addition to his voiceover roles in many Disney shorts of the same era, as well as also being sought to narrate several children's records telling popular stories, as his distinct vocals and calm delivery proved to be very popular with children. But as the popularity of radio declined with the rise of TV, Holloway moved back into more traditional acting roles, playing bit parts and walk-on roles in countless TV shows similar to his movie parts in the 1930s. He even had small appearances on such popular shows as The Untouchables, Gilligan's Island, and The Twilight Zone, among many, many others. But it was in the 1960s that he would be cast as his most iconic character, as well as his personal favorite. Winnie the Pooh. Having acquired the rights to adapt the famous children's books into a visual medium, Walt Disney knew that he needed a very soothing and calm, yet childlike voice for the title character, and Holloway proved to be the perfect fit, to the point that some even felt he was born to voice the character. The animators even slightly altered his look from the books so that he would bear a small resemblance to Holloway, and if you look at the two side by side, they do indeed share a slight likeness. But while he was at Disney Studios voicing Winnie the Pooh, he would also land one of his other most well-known roles, because according to Holloway himself, Walt Disney had auditioned over 100 actors for the role of Kaa in The Jungle Book, but none of them were what he wanted, so he ended up running into Holloway and asked if he could give it a try, and ended up cast in the part, probably because Disney didn't want the character to come across as too menacing, and Holloway's naturally calm voice probably provided the balance he was looking for. And it was for a similar reason that he was asked to perform the character with a lisp, so he wouldn't come across as too scary. Then during test screenings, Kaa proved to be such a popular character among both the audience and crew that a new scene was written for him, the iconic Trust in Me sequence, where Holloway was even consulted by the animators on how the scene should go and how the character should look, as well as got to prove just how impressive his range was. Seriously, even with a voice so naturally suited to the most harmless teddy bear on earth, he could be surprisingly menacing when he wanted to, and has been noted to this day to creep people out with his subtly evil portrayal of a hungry predator. But that being said, Holloway also had input on the more comical side of the character as well, as his constantly hurting his back was apparently his idea, saying, quote, "Wouldn't it be funny if a snake got a backache because it would be a lawn back?" And considering what we see in the final product, the animators definitely agreed with him on that. After the death of Walt Disney, however, Holloway's career started to slow down in part because he was starting to get old himself. While he did continue voicing Winnie the Pooh, he would only lend his voice to one other new Disney character, with that being Rookfort in the Aristocats, and started appearing in less movies and TV shows, though he was one of the few voice actors called back to voice his character in The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, as that movie had a rather odd production, as I detailed in another video, which you can find a link in the description to, and he also made his last physical appearance in the same year in Thunder and Lightning. He would retire from the role of Winnie the Pooh in 1981, at which point he would be taken over by Hal Smith for a few years, and retired from acting completely after voicing the narrator in an episode of Moonlighting in 1986. However, Holloway did consider coming out of retirement to voice Winnie the Pooh again in the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, but proved too old for the role at that point. So with this blessing, the part was given to Jim Cummings, who was a total dead ringer for Holloway and continues to voice the character to this day, as well as inherited many of his other roles in Disney movies. Holloway's last public appearance was in 1991 when he was made a Disney legend. He died in November of the next year of a heart attack, and his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. He never married, but was survived by a son he had adopted. Though Sterling Holloway never became a famous movie star, just as he wanted, he still managed to leave behind a legacy that makes him beloved by many even decades after his death. His characters in Disney movies were often considered a major standout and proved very popular with audiences, and his unique voice was always perfectly suited for them no matter what, as his more loony performance as the Cheshire Cat and creepy portrayal of Kaa most definitely prove. And even within the company, Sterling Holloway was universally beloved by everyone and was even a favorite of Walt Disney himself. And the company's love and respect for him would extend far beyond his death, to the point that he was the only person besides James McDonald as Jacques and Gus to be archived for more than one character in the celebratory short Once Upon a Studio, as I explained in another video, which you can also find a link in the description too. Being used for Kaa, the Cheshire Cat, and Winnie the Pooh himself. And in the decades following his death, Jim Cummings' dead-on imitation of him has ensured that Holloway's voice has become the definitive one for the character of Winnie the Pooh, to the point that most could never imagine him with any other. So while Sterling Holloway did have a rather storied career spanning decades in movies, radio, and television, as well as other hobbies and endeavors such as being an avid art collector and developing a show to raise money for the Army during World War II, his legacy will always be directly tied back to the Walt Disney Company, both because that's where he got to voice his most famous characters, and because of how beloved he was with everybody working there. Bruce Reitherman, the voice of Christopher Robin in Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, even described Holloway as, quote, "He was Winnie the Pooh. He was a teddy bear." Proving that no matter what else he did in his career, Sterling Holloway was and will always be known as Winnie the Pooh, a fact that he was said to be very happy about. Okay, I think that ends this history lesson. Now I'd like to hear from all of you. What do you think of Sterling Holloway and his career? And had you even heard of him before you clicked on this video? Whatever the case, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it. And I hope to see you all next time.